So now, if I want to go to my chart slash 2D view, all I do is go down to the chart option, hit the right arrow key, and find where it says chart slash 2D sonar.
Some of them will only say sonar.
Some will only say sonar, correct? And then I hit the right arrow key, and it will take me directly to that view.
Yeah.
So you can do like chart 2D.
It does not matter if you hid views in the previous menu. Every view in your Helix will show up in this shortcut.
2D.
Yep. So you're just looking at sonar.
It's the quickest way to navigate views.
So if you want to go to what I said, go to chart, and then chart 2D. Yeah, there's not any view in that Helix that takes more than 3 buttons.
In my mind, I know I want chart, 2D, and SI.
Right.
I can do that, but I have to start with chart being the basis on the drop-down,
Yes,
right? So if you're gonna combine chart with any other information, you gotta start with that chart drop-down.
Oh,
If you just want sonar information, then the top sonar gives you all the options.
On a Solix, everything's customizable. And when you hit the view button, it shows you didn't have to know the name of it, it just shows you. Right. And you can do 4. Right, you can do 4 panes. So those are all the ways we can navigate our Humminbird Helix. Setup menu we get to by hitting the menu button 2 times and is selecting the setup tab across the top. It looks like a little gear. Okay. Now, this is going to be challenging to follow along because there's so many different menus. If I skip something as I go through this menu, don't panic. We'll talk about it later because it's in another spot on a different software. Okay? So don't panic if I skip over something you're looking at. Some of you will see as your very first choice the word language. Whatever you do, do not stop your cursor on the word language. Don't do it. If you change it out of English, you're on your own. I will deny anyone being in my class that did that. There have been a few sent back to Humminbird from my classes because they were in the wrong language when we left the class. Don't change it. Just don't change it. Don't. Unless you're fluent in Arabic, Chinese, Yugoslavian, I don't know what all I've seen.
Portuguese.
Yeah, it's ridiculous what you'll see up there. The next choice is user mode, and you may have to drop down in your menu farther to find user mode. But the next thing I want to talk about is the user mode. Humminbird has 2 user modes with the Humminbird Helix. The first user mode is called angler mode, or normal. Angler mode, I like to refer to, and do not take offense at this, but I think everybody will understand what I'm talking about. Humminbird for Dummies. Remember those books back in the day when Microsoft was coming out and Excel and all these things, and they had the books, right? Microsoft or email for dummies or whatever. I bought all of them because I'm not a very computer literate dude. Well, that angler mode is kind of Humminbird for Dummies. But don't feel like a dummy if you run it in angler mode. Angler mode was created for the fisherman that wants to turn on their Humminbird and go fish. That's what it was created for. They will function perfectly fine in angler mode. You will just have less options for adjustment in angler mode. That's all it does. So instead of having 30 things to adjust, you'll have 10. And they're 10 good things to adjust. You'll still see fish, find fish, catch fish. It's not an issue. But for this class, because we're going to the next level, we want to be in custom mode. So I want everyone to switch from angler mode to custom mode or advanced mode. When you switched, you should have seen your menu kind of explode, right? Just a lot more options. So now we have a lot more options. As we scroll through the menu, next we should see, let's see.
Restore defaults.
Oh, I'm trying to find a new software to cheat off of. I looked at so many of these. Here's this guy, got a brand new.
Yep.
Restore defaults. There we go. Restore defaults. Restore defaults is our get out of jail free card. That is a button that if we had more time, I'd make everybody hit it 5 times in this class. Because you should get used to using that button.
Don't be scared to use it.
Restore defaults is the Control-Alt-Delete of a Humminbird Helix. And anybody in here that's ever owned a computer has hit Control-Alt-Delete more than once in your lifetime. Restore defaults will restart your Humminbird Helix with factory settings. That's all it does. That's all it does. Does not change a waypoint, doesn't alter anything you've saved, and it does not change your software level. It just restarts the units and takes all the settings back to the factory defaults. It is absolutely amazing how many things that will fix. Absolutely amazing. If you truly have a problem, that problem may resurface again over time, but it will reset it and get you up and running, and you'll be able to finish your day of fishing or whatever. After restore defaults, I believe it says format navigation directories. Is that accurate? Yeah. So when you store digital data, this is a lesson on pretty much useless information. But when you store digital data and hit delete, you really do not remove data from where it's stored. You give the hardware permission to overwrite that storage segment. If, and I will not, if someone calls Humminbird and says, Kendall said this, I will hunt you down and you'll have no tires left on your cars. If you delete all the waypoints off your Humminbird and never save another one, there's a long shot chance Humminbird can recover those waypoints because they're still there. You hit delete, you made them so you can't see them, but if you haven't saved anything over the top of them, there's a chance that they can get them back. If you format a storage device, you take it back to 0 and disintegrate anything that was on it. You literally make it brand new again, which means nothing is left on there. 2 reasons you would ever hit that button on your Humminbird Helix. Number 1, you sold it to Matt Cowen, and unless you want to see him on your fishing spot, you better make sure they're not in your Humminbird Helix anymore. Or number 2, you get corrupt data from sharing waypoints with a friend via SD cards, and for some reason your Humminbird cannot navigate around that corrupt data. You will never ever know that happened unless you send it to Humminbird customer service. And then they will ask you, do you want us to reformat your drive or not? Because if they do, you'll never have one of those waypoints left. The only reason I talk about this as much as I just did isn't so you'll hit that button. It's to give you a reason to back up your waypoints as often as you think you should. It literally takes 8 seconds to save all your waypoints to an SD card.
And the reason why you would back up your waypoints, obviously so you can have them, but if you have 10,000 waypoints on your unit, it's gonna go function way slower than it did when it came right out of the box. Right? We all get frustrated. You know, Vern's got one right here that I'm gonna steal because he's got all the good spots on Fortec. But we just want it to work as quick and as efficient as we want. But if you keep putting waypoints on a graph for 5 years, you're expecting it to go slower. It has to load a lot of information on all the maps, whether you're looking at that map or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, one thing I don't think a lot of people realize, and this kind of gets off on another tangent, but it's a good place to talk about it. Your Humminbird Helix, every time you move, and that map has to reposition, for lack of a better word, it redraws the entire map card and every waypoint saved in your unit that is marked as visible. It doesn't just redraw the half a square mile that you think you're looking at. If you have 10,000 waypoints saved and that map screen moves 1/8 of an inch, it redraws all 10,000 waypoints and every lake on that map card. That's okay. So I got asked, how do you save waypoints to an SD card? So what we got to do to do this is go to our navigation tab. To get to all those tabs, you hit your main menu button twice. And you'll see a navigation tab across the top. You will see a choice that says waypoints, routes, and tracks. You will highlight that and hit the right arrow. Waypoint, waypoints, routes, and tracks. You, under options, when you hit the right arrow,
Or you can save it.
you will see one that says select all and hit the right button, the right arrow. Then you will see options to delete, export, show, or hide.
Where's that at?
Under the nav button,
Yeah.
You would go down to export
options, right arrow.
and hit the right arrow key. And if you have a blank SD card in one of your card slots, it will export all your waypoints to that SD card.
So can you export on a 7?
You can export on everything that's, takes a chip. Fives don't take chips, so it is what it is on a 5.
Yeah.
Some of the 7s, actually all 7s will take a micro.
So, once you have waypoints on a card, to reinstall them into your head unit, all you have to do is insert that card into one of the slots, and it will ask you, do you want to upload all these waypoints to your head unit? You say yes, and it dumps them in there. Or select multiple and instead of the select all and option. When you pick select multiple and export, you highlight them just like clicking on programs or data files on a computer, right? You put the keypad on it, hit the right arrow, drop down 3, hit the right arrow, drop down 6, hit the right arrow. And when you're all done selecting them, it will move the selected choices to the SD card as well, okay? We'll take it a step further. You can save waypoints in what they call groups on a Humminbird Helix. That is no different than saving waypoints in a file on a computer. In a perfect world, what I would recommend is every lake you fish, you create a group for that lake. You create a group for Fort Peck, a group for Lake Sakakawea, a group for Yellowtail, a group for Cooney, right? Wherever you guys fish close to here. If you already have your waypoints in your unit and you want to start separating them by lake, how do you know which ones go to which lake? Well, you'll see a choice at the top of that waypoints, routes, and track menu that says sort. There's a reason they give us many, many, many ways to sort our waypoints. If you are sitting in your living room and you have waypoints from 6 different lakes, they should probably be 6 different unique distances away from your home. So if you sort by distance, it will become obvious which waypoints are from Lake Sakakawea, which ones are Fort Peck, which ones are Cooney, because Sakakawea is going to be 400 miles away, right? Peck's going to be 250 miles away, and Cooney's going to be 47 miles away, or whatever it is. I'm kind of close, aren't I?
Yeah, you're really good.
Kind of
I
close.
remember that.
So you will be able to see in this list, sorted by distance, that all these waypoints that are over 400 miles away must be Lake Sakakawea. So you highlight those and drag them to the group you created called Lake Sakakawea. Then you do the same for Cooney, and whatever's left is Fort Peck. Then, when you're fishing on Fort Peck, you go into the groups and hide Lake Sakakawea and Cooney, and it won't redraw them because they're hidden. And your unit will function so much faster and so much better. It's a great winter project. I'm not saying I would do it now, right? Open water's right around the corner. I get it. It's no fun sitting there sorting waypoints. But anyways, I usually don't go to this part in this class, but the questions came up, so we did it.
I would guess
It's an incredible, incredible, incredible
that
waypoint
1%,
management system.
1% of you in here will do that. Do I do it? Nope. I'd be lying to you if I did. Do I know how? Yeah. But I delete a ton of waypoints after I fish that day, because usually I'm waypointing fish that I'm gonna go try to catch. If it's structure, I put a different icon on and I try to keep those, but you're not gonna do this. Wipe my graph clean. I save my waypoints to a card, and I wipe it clean because, and Johnny's gonna get into this, I don't go fish memories. I just wanna look at my graph. If there's waypoints on my graph from last fall, I'm gonna drive to that waypoint. It's just human nature, you're gonna. But they're not gone forever. I just don't wanna see them all because I wanna find new spots or maybe something changed. It makes you use your units versus just, well, I've got a waypoint over, that means I always catch fish over there. Well, don't just go there because you got a waypoint. Find them, and we'll get into that. So that's another thing that I do, is get rid of all my waypoints at the beginning of the year.
So you hit the mark button, and then it'll give you some options. If you just hit the mark button twice, it saves a waypoint instantly.
That's the easiest. Just hit mark twice.
Yeah, right.
Because half the time you're driving by it and you cursor it over and you're trying not to hit the shore and just hit.
If you move the cursor to anywhere on a sonar screen or a map screen and hit the mark button twice, it saves the waypoint where the cursor is located, not where your boat is located. Hopefully, if we get there, we're running out of time.
No, we got more time. Kendall, we got more time than money. Come on.
All right, so let's get back into the setup menu so we can actually finish setting up our units.
You can tell that you guys have a different.
Why is that?
Yeah, but you guys have a.
There's some ways to see digital data on our screen. If you want to see numbers on your screen, the factory default is an overlay setting. With the overlay setting, you'll see 4 numbers in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Depth, speed, water temperature, and the time of day. Those can only be displayed in the lower left-hand corner. It's always those 4 pieces of data, and we cannot adjust the size or placement, right? If you want fully customizable data, you need to switch the digital overlay function to boxes. You do that by hitting the left arrow key when you have the digital data box highlighted. This gives us a fully customizable, almost infinite options of data that we can display on the screen. To change what's in those boxes, you go to select readouts or edit data boxes and hit the right-hand arrow key. When you do that, you will get a drop-down menu in the center that lists all the boxes. When you highlight a box and scroll right or left with your cursor pad, you will see all the different pieces of data that you can choose to display in that said box. I am not going to stand up here and tell anyone what they should see on their screen, but they're called depth finders for a reason. It probably makes sense to have the depth in one of those boxes. It's over your head. There's another option that says select navigation readouts or edit navigation boxes below that. That allows us to edit the data in those boxes for when we're using the GPS to navigate from point A to point B. When you're driving your boat from spot to spot, you may want different data on your screen, meaning how far away is the spot I'm driving to? What time am I going to get to the spot I'm driving to? Am I on course or off course getting to the next spot I'm driving to? And that's all fine and dandy unless you have iPilot Link on your boat, because iPilot Link uses the navigation mode in our HUMMINBIRD Helix to function. When you hit spot lock on an iPilot Link trolley motor, your HUMMINBIRD Helix is now navigating to a waypoint. and it will switch whatever data you have selected in those boxes to the navigation boxes. So if you're expecting to see a piece of data while you're fishing, but you don't have that selected under your navigation boxes, you're not gonna see it in spot lock mode, follow the contour mode, or autopilot mode, because you're now navigating.
It's on the top left. Your depth is.
Yep.
There you go.
There's another option that says select navigation readouts or edit navigation boxes below that. That allows us to edit the data in those boxes for when we're using the GPS to navigate from point A to point B. When you're driving your boat from spot to spot, you may want different data on your screen, meaning how far away is the spot I'm driving to? What time am I going to get to the spot I'm driving to? Am I on course or off course getting to the next spot I'm driving to? And that's all fine and dandy unless you have iPilot Link on your boat, because iPilot Link uses the navigation mode in our Humminbird Helix to function. When you hit spot lock on an iPilot Link trolling motor, your Humminbird Helix is now navigating to a waypoint. And it will switch whatever data you have selected in those boxes to the navigation boxes. So if you're expecting to see a piece of data while you're fishing, but you don't have that selected under your navigation boxes, you're not gonna see it in spot lock mode, follow the contour mode, or autopilot mode, because you're now navigating.
It's on the top left. Your depth is.
I think there's a lot of people out there right now that are trying to duplicate marketing images. And if that's something that brings you enjoyment, then do it. By all means, do it. But I want you to realize what it takes for Humminbird to get that picture of the bridge. Everybody knows the bridge picture. They've been using it for how long? 10 years now?
Since Mega came out.
Yeah. Do you know how long it took them to get that image of that bridge? How many boats drove over that bridge how many times before they got that image of that bridge? You don't want to know. I've been to that bridge. 3 different trips I've been to that lake with Humminbird and driven over that bridge, and I have yet to see on anybody's depth finder what's on the box when we buy a Humminbird, a picture of that bridge, right? I'm not saying the picture's made up. It's not made up. It's a screenshot, but it doesn't happen every time they drive over that bridge, right? I think all of us need to understand the whole point of owning a Humminbird is to get it dialed in good enough that we can side image a school of fish, we can down image a school of fish, we can 2D sonar a school of fish, know they're there, put a waypoint on them, go back and fish for them and catch them. That's why we own a Humminbird. And Matt, I don't know about you, but I get mine good enough and I go fishing.
Every single day.
I get it good enough. Some days it's phenomenal. Some days, Matt, I can get those pictures. Other days, I can't get anywhere close, and I don't let it bother me. If I can mark a fish, I go try to catch fish. So that's what I'm gonna help us with today with settings. I am not gonna tell anybody, put it on this number. I'm not gonna tell anybody that this is an absolute must when you're setting up your screen. If you can look at it, see fish, and catch fish, you're doing it perfectly. Do you have anything to add to that, Matt?
Well, just know that you're always, if you want to get better pictures, you're always going to be adjusting 2 things: sensitivity and contrast in all views. And don't be scared. He's going to show you how to do it. There isn't one setting, because water temperature changes, depth changes, how fast you're driving changes, water clarity changes, and that all affects everything that these things do through the sonar side. But you need to know how to adjust contrast and sensitivity, and he's going to teach you that.
All right, so to get started, 2D sonar view, that's where we're gonna start. I still believe 2D sonar is the most commonly used sonar. I think 2D sonar is probably still the most powerful sonar because it works under all conditions. I can go fast, I can go slow, I can use it shallow, I can use it deep. So the easiest way to get to the 2D sonar screen is to press and hold your view button.
Sonar?
Select Sonar, and it's the very first choice. It'll say Sonar View or 2D View.
So we need to turn your fish icons off.
Go ahead. So, number one, shortcut on all sonar screens. Sensitivity can be adjusted with the plus and minus buttons without hitting menu first.
There you go.
Sensitivity can be adjusted with the plus and minus buttons without hitting sonar or menu first. So on any sonar screen, if you want to turn the sensitivity up, you just hit plus. You want to turn it down, you hit minus. What are we adjusting when we adjust sensitivity? We are telling that unit how much data to display on the sonar screen. When we turn up sensitivity, we will see more targets. When we turn down the sensitivity, that unit will display less targets, right? It's just like volume on a radio. You turn it up, you hear more. You turn it down, you hear less. Sensitivity, you turn it up, you see more. You turn it down, you see less. Here is the most scientific way on earth to adjust your sensitivity. You turn it up, and you turn it up, and you turn it up, and you keep turning it up. And when you go, oh my God, that looks absolutely horrible, you turn it down. Then you turn it down, and you turn it down. And when you go, holy crap, does that look good? You stop. And I'm not
Don't worry about the number.
No, the number doesn't matter.
Where's the number?
The number does not matter. That's why there's no such thing as magic settings. And I'm not exaggerating. That's how I adjust my sensitivity. I turn it up, I turn it up, I turn it up. When I go, ooh, yuck, that's horrible. I turn it down and I turn it down and I go, wow, that looks pretty nice. Let's try this for a while. And you know what? 3 minutes later, if I don't like it, I turn it up and I turn it up and I turn it up. And then I turn it down and I go, that looks a little better. Let's try that for a while. Then I go around the corner into another bay and the water changed depth and the water temperature changed and I turn it up and I turn it up and I turn it up and I'm like, wow, it really changed. And I turn it up some more and turn it up some more and then I turn it down and I'm like, oh, that looks really good. And then I get to the back of the creek arm where it's all weedy instead of rocks and I turn it down and turn it down and turn it down and turn it down because the weeds are so thick I got to turn it down to see what's going on. Right? Then when I leave the bay, I turn it up and I turn it, and if this is getting old, you should be the guy hitting the button all day long. The reason that shortcut was put in there is because when the Helix first came out, you had to hit menu to adjust sensitivity, and every guy on the pro staff, I think, called within 30 seconds of each other and said, what on earth did you do this for? You should be adjusting your sensitivity almost nonstop, especially when you're driving your boat. When you're fishing, I get it, you don't touch it all that much, but when I'm driving my boat, every time I speed up, slow down, go from shallow to deep, deep to shallow, anything like that, I am adjusting my sensitivity. I'm honestly surprised I haven't wore the buttons out on one of these units yet. That's how often I adjust sensitivity. Okay, so that is sensitivity. Now, to make more sonar adjustments, we want to hit the menu button one time. This is called the express menu. This is the express menu for 2D sonar. It's a very short menu. These are the most commonly adjusted items on 2D sonar. The second option is contrast. Contrast with 2D color sonar, and I see some, we'll call them seasoned folks in the room. I don't like to use words that might make us sound older than we are. But I remember the first color TV my dad bought. You had this little door at the bottom and you opened it up and you pushed this little button in and it popped out. And if you twisted it one way, it turned the screen kind of red. If you twisted it the other way, it turned the screen kind of, remember that? That's what contrast is going to do to your color stream. If you turn it way up, it's going to shade all the colors towards the red spectrum. And if you turn it way down, it's going to shade everything kind of to a yellowish, greenish, chartreusey color almost. I'm not here to tell anybody what they think looks better than the other. But I like contrast on 2D sonar pretty close to the middle. It gives me a little bit of each end for color spectrum. When we adjust the contrast, we are not adjusting the amount of data we see, we're adjusting how it looks. But the amount of information does not change at all. The only thing that changes the amount of information is your sensitivity. Contrast just adjusts how it looks. Chart speed should be in there somewhere. Oh, upper and lower range is next, I think. Upper and lower range, really self-explanatory. Put the upper on 0, the lower on auto, and let her buck. I don't play with them much. Now, when we salmon fished, we knocked the upper range down some because we knew we weren't fishing in the top 40 feet of the water column. That's kind of a once a year
Sitting
thing.
still and something's goofy with your transducer, and
Right.
it keeps losing bottom and jumping around. That's the only time I would say set your lower range
Right.
5 feet deeper than what you're fishing,
Right.
so it can't jump around.
Right.
You pin it, and if you go deeper, you just lose bottom. Just how it is.
One thing I do with that is I use that as a zoom function rather than using the zoom function.
Right, and it works well too. You can shrink down the amount of the water column and, and I guess if you're 100% certain the fish are on the bottom, that's a good thing to do. But I traveled the world tournament fishing so long and got burnt by someone catching a suspended fish that I don't want to miss out on that. So I look at the whole water column if I can. 0 and auto.
So
Yeah.
upper range will change this from 0.
You said chart speed.
Chart speed, yeah. So I look at chart speed maybe different than some others. Matt, you may or may not agree, and that's what's great about Sonar is we can have differing opinions and I'm still right. So as long as we all understand that, everything's good. On 2D Sonar and 2D Sonar only, I'm just kidding.
He's gonna say, put it on max.
I'm gonna say put it on max, because the way liquid crystal works is the only way you can draw new data is for old data to leave the screen.
2D for sure.
On 2D, I want it going as fast as I can, but I'm only gonna say that for 2D,
Correct.
right? I'm gonna change my mind here in a second, but on 2D, I want that going fast because it puts new data on, especially if I'm not sitting still fishing, right? If I'm scanning for fish at 6, 8, 10, 12 miles an hour, which I do a lot, if you're driving 40 miles an hour down the lake, I want that chart speed going as quickly as I can to get new data, right? Because I'm covering ground. When you're sitting still fishing, could you turn 2D down to 5? Sure you could, because you're not missing much. You're sitting in one spot. So probably not that big a deal at fishing speeds, but at higher than fishing speeds, definitely the faster the chart speed, the more data you're going to see. That's the only reason why.
On 2D. Just 2D.
This 2D. Sonar colors, again, you're not changing the data you're viewing, you're changing how it looks. Everybody in here has a different set of eyes than the person sitting next to them, and everybody's gonna like something different on that screen. Matt, if I'm not mistaken, you use the default palette a lot.
Because I didn't grow up using
Right,
Lowrance.
I learned on the Lowrance color palette, so that's what I use, which is color palette number 1. Matt likes number 5. Some guys like the green and yellow and blue. Other guys like who knows what color, but there's 19 different color palettes to pick from.
And at night, don't be scared to
Yeah,
change them.
oh yeah, at nighttime, the green one or anything with a black background,
It
right?
just pops.
Right, yeah. That green one at night is even on
And
side
6 is
and
good
side and
too.
down.
6 is really good. I still don't know why they put gray in there.
I don't either.
Has anybody ever used it since
I don't
they
think
built
so.
it?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Huh.
Why would you buy
Color.
color to not use color?
Yeah.
Down imaging next, because that's in order. Down imaging next. You can get there one of several ways, I guess. If you hit your view button either once or twice, depending on your software, you'll go to view to the down image. Or you can press and hold that view button, go to Sonar and select DI view, and you'll go right there. Again, plus and minus.
Burning through the sonar.
Plus and minus will adjust your sensitivity.
So scroll right.
You will notice though, with imaging, and when I say imaging, I mean down imaging, side imaging, 360 imaging if you have it. With imaging, as you turn your sensitivity up, you tend to wash out the screen with too much color, right? So you turn it up, you turn it down, and when you turn it down, you're like, wow, I really like the amount of data I had before, but the color was all whacked out and I didn't care for the picture. So you turn it down and then the picture looks good, but you're not happy with the amount of detail in your image anymore. Okay, but sensitivity is still adjusted the same way. There's another shortcut I want to talk about before we go into the express menu, and that is the check mark button. In down imaging and side imaging both, the check mark button adjusts or selects the frequency range that we are viewing. With down imaging and side imaging, there are 3 different frequency ranges we can view. They are all centered around a number, right? Remember, we're chirping a range. But they center around 455 kilohertz, 800 kilohertz, and 1.2 megahertz, which is where mega imaging came from. The science behind frequency says this: the lower the number, the further that sound will penetrate the water, but the less detail it will give you in your image. So as the number gets bigger, your range decreases, but the detail increases. So 455 kilohertz, furthest out to the side, furthest down, least amount of image quality. 800, less range, better image. 1.2, incredible image, less range. When Humminbird first came out with mega imaging, there was a huge outcry about we can't see very far, we can't see very far, we can't see very far. So they came out with Mega Plus to get the range back.
You have your cursor out there.
So here's the deal. I said before when we talked about sensitivity, who cares about the numbers? I'm going to say the same thing when we talk about frequency. Who cares about the numbers? The reason Humminbird made it so easy to switch frequency is so we do it more often. If I am looking at a down image picture or a side image picture, and I've played with the sensitivity, and I've played with the contrast, and I bounce back and forth, and I can't get the image I want, I just start hitting the check mark button. And as you scroll through those 3 different views, it will not take very long for you to go, wow, that one looks nice. And that's the one you should look at. And I don't care if it says 455, 800, or 1.2. All I want to know is when I saw it, I said, wow, that looks nice. Devils Lake, North Dakota, you come there in August and try to use mega imaging, you're going to hate yourself. Because mega imaging shows every freshwater shrimp and every piece of algae in Devil's Lake, and that's all you see. You can't filter it out. Turn your sensitivity down, turn your contrast up, play all the games, and that image, that frequency range shows such small targets that you can't see the forest for the trees. It literally covers everything up with algae and shrimp. Okay, science says, wow, I'm only in 12 feet of water, I should use mega imaging. But you turn mega imaging on and the picture looks horrible. You switch to 455, which can't draw those little tiny targets, and your picture is, oh my God, this is brilliant, right? So forget the science, look at the picture. So we'll hit our menu button one time and we're going to get an express menu. Some of you will see sensitivity, contrast, sharpness. Some of you will see sensitivity and DI enhance. If you see DI enhance, I want you to highlight that and hit the right arrow key. Otherwise, we're going to talk about contrast. Now you should see contrast in your DI enhance menu. And never in my life, at 18 years old, learning how to develop a black and white photograph, did I think I would use that in a Humminbird training session. But it makes sense. When you develop black and white photography, to get an award-winning photo, you need to take this piece of photo paper and somewhere on that paper have something that is perfect black. No light, no nothing, perfect black. And on the same image, have a spot that has perfect white. And it's really hard to do. If you've never tried to do it, it's virtually impossible. Ansel Adams, if anybody's a photography buff, right, he took a lot of pictures out this way, if I'm not mistaken. Best ever at it. His photos were, I mean, so dramatic in contrast, right? Because he had blacks that were black and whites that were white. What we want to try to do with the contrast and sensitivity settings on down imaging and side imaging is duplicate an Ansel Adams black and white photo. We want the blacks on that screen to be as black as we can get them while still getting the colored part of the screen as colorful as we possibly can. Every time we adjust sensitivity, we are going to have to back it up by adjusting contrast. But if you play with it, it will not take you long to see exactly what I'm talking about turning one up till you get too much color and then adjust the contrast till you don't have too much, back and forth, back and forth. Yes, sir. We'll get pretty good. Now, granted, in this classroom on simulator mode, it's going to be a little easier to do this because we don't have waves, right? We don't have different bottom content, all that kind of stuff. But I'm walking around the room looking over shoulders saying that I think they all understand contrast. I mean, the images I'm seeing look pretty legit.
You just have to make yourself do it when you get out on the water.
Right.
You just have to.
All right, so the next choice is sharpness. And because we're running behind, I'll let you push the button, but I'm going to tell you what to do.
Turn it off.
Go to sharpness, turn it up, turn it up, turn it up, turn it down, turn it down, turn it down, turn it off, forget it's there. It should be eliminated from the menu. They haven't taken it out. I have zero clue what it does. To me, it makes the picture look worse, not better. We're going to talk chart speed now in imaging. You will hear over and over and over and over and over when we discuss chart speed and imaging, meaning down imaging or side imaging again. The reason I combine them is because they're the same. They're the same but different. It's just a different angle, right? Down imaging shoots like this, side imaging like this. It's the same exact beam, it's the same frequency, so your adjustments are the same. Chart speed, you'll hear it said, match your chart speed to your boat speed. Match your chart speed to your boat speed. I hear people say that all the time, and then I look at who's hearing it and they're like, huh? I don't get it. What they mean by matching chart speed to boat speed is we want the chart moving as close to the same speed as our boat is moving through the water as possible. Why is this? Side and down imaging give us incredibly, incredibly detailed images. Almost photographic quality. And because we have the capability of seeing that much detail, we want it to be as accurate as it can possibly be, not distorted. If our chart is going too fast, it takes everything on that image and stretches it out. And if your chart is going too slow, it takes everything in the image and compresses it together. So a rock that is perfectly round will appear as an oval or as a spike. We don't want that. We want it to appear perfectly round. The absolute best way to do this is to drive past something you can visually see. When your transducer hits it, it should appear on your chart. And when the transducer is no longer hitting it, it should no longer draw it. If you're 10 yards past an object and it's still drawing it on your chart is not moving at the right speed and you need to adjust it. So we can try by trial and error and spend a half an hour at the boat ramp every morning, driving by the boat ramp, getting our chart speed dialed in, or we can be very, very thankful that Humminbird got stone cold lucky that their chart speed numbers will match your boat speed in miles per hour, and it's perfect. So if you're going 2 miles an hour, you set it on number 2. If you're going 3 miles an hour, you set it on 3. 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. And I finally got Justin to admit to me that they got lucky.
That wasn't by plan.
It was not by plan, but they sure are glad that it worked that way, because it's the only company that works that way. So, down imaging and side imaging, depending on the speed I'm traveling, I prefer to run my chart speed at that number. Now, I look at down imaging and side imaging a lot. Matt Cowen looks at it a lot. A few other people in this room might look at it a lot. When I am graphing for fish, I will be the first to admit, there's a lot of days I look at it on 10, because it's easier than adjusting the chart speed.
Well, so back up. Why, do we know why it's on 10? What did we do in 2D? Right? So it's not, it's independent, it's only one setting. If you put your chart speed on max on 2D and you rotate to side imaging or down imaging, what's your chart speed gonna be?
Max.
You have to adjust it.
But a lot of times I don't.
Usually you just drive around faster, so it looks good.
Maybe. Or or my head just makes the adjustment for me, because I look at it for hours at a time, right? So,
But if you want it to be
you want it to be
clearest,
perfect, turn it down.
especially in the kilohertz setting.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can get away with being, I usually run mine at 4 on my side imaging, no matter what, because I stare at it a ton, and it gives me a good enough picture to where I don't have to keep adjusting my chart speed every single time I speed up or slow down. But if you ever bump it down to kilohertz, you have to be right there.
Right. Colors, again, man, I'll talk to 10 pros and 10 guys have 10 favorites.
What's your favorite color?
Depends what the weather's like. Sunny days, I like number 2. Cloudy days, I like the blue one, which I think is number 1, or is it 1? I don't know the number.
I
The
like
blue
2
one.
and 11.
1 is the blue one. I like the blue one when it's cloudy, not so bright. In the bright sun, number 2, all day, every day.
11 is my most favorite, only because, what do we see as a hard bottom in 2D?
Red.
11's the only one you get a hard bottom in red.
But again, you're not changing the data,
No, it's
You're
just
just changing
What your
color.
eyes like.
right? It's just what your eyes like the best. I do not know scientifically what dynamic contrast does. I don't understand the software. I understand what I think it does for me personally. Dynamic contrast will allow you to run your sensitivity higher without having to adjust your contrast so often. So it kind of automatically corrects the contrast for higher sensitivities. So if you turn your sensitivity way up and then toggle dynamic contrast off and on, off and on, off and on, you'll see what I'm talking about. I personally like dynamic contrast. I think it cleans my picture up, so I leave it on all the time. But not everybody likes
And the
dynamic
only
contrast.
reason I don't use dynamic contrast is I've been so ingrained to play with my sensitivity and contrast at the same time on any of my 3D views, being down imaging and side imaging, that as soon as I turn dynamic contrast on, then all my numbers in my head that I have programmed for sensitivity and contrast change. It's probably easier.
It is a
I'm just
lot
so
easier.
used to playing with my contrast and sensitivity so much that I just leave it on.
So side imaging, like I said, is exactly the same as down imaging, it just shows different directions, right? So as far as cone angle, cone width, all our contrast settings, sensitivity settings, all that stuff, we're gonna adjust it the same. Now Matt has a pretty cool trick that he uses for side imaging where you use the zoom, so do you wanna kind of talk about that
I
a little
think you
bit?
might want to talk about recommended distance that you're looking and why.
You can do that.
Because we all want to see more, but seeing more isn't always the best.
I've got a really good analogy for this.
I don't want to drive by something that I can't stop and cast to. And so I've measured, I can cast a 1/4 ounce jig in a plastic 70 feet. So I only look 70 feet. Why? Because I can stop and pitch, or those pictures on my screen, it's trying to put so much information on these graphs that when you start looking way out, you might not be able to see fish.
So here's a good illustration. We're gonna go to the local football field on Friday night. set a video camera at the top of the bleachers on the 50-yard line. Point it right down the 50-yard line and use your zoom so you can just see both end zones. Right? You're gonna hit record and walk away. You're gonna go home and you're gonna put that, I don't have a big screen TV in here. You're gonna put that on your 70-inch TV set in your living room. Now, we're recording a football game of grown men, right? 6'6", 6'7", 280-pounders football game, right? Big dudes. And you're gonna watch that on a 70-inch screen, and I'm gonna say it's gonna take us about 3 minutes to say this is ridiculous. I don't know what's going on down there. I can't tell who's blocking who. When they throw a pass, I can't even see the ball in the air. And we're watching on a 70-inch TV screen. But yet, we'll go buy a 9-inch Humminbird Helix, set it to look 150 feet to the right and 150 feet to the left, and drive down the shore at Fort Peck and wonder why we can't see 15-inch walleyes. You're looking at 300 feet. That's 100 yards, folks. We just got done saying we wouldn't be able to watch a football game with grown men looking at 100 yards on a 70-inch screen, but we're gonna try to look for 15-inch walleyes on a 100-yard playing field on a 9-inch screen? When you say it out loud, you're gonna go, oh my God, have I been dumb for a while, right? Duh. Why would I try to look at that much on a 9-inch screen? We've all done it. When I first got it, oh man, 200 feet each side, driving around, oh, I'm gonna find them. Some days, 50 feet, 40 feet, right? I'll look. I do the same thing as Matt. My average cast, 70, 75 feet. That's without trying to throw it real hard. Normal cast. If I can't catch it, I don't need to see it. Now, when I'm looking for structure, when I'm looking for a rock pile, I'm looking for a brush pile, a weed edge, absolutely, 150, 200 feet, no problem, because all I'm looking for is a white blob. I see that white blob, I put a cursor on it, I save a waypoint, I go back around, dial my side imaging to 50 feet and drive over it again and get a detailed picture. But when I'm looking for fish, 70 feet max.
And sometimes less.
Yeah, 40, 50,
If I'm
often.
driving down a steep break on the bank and it's only 30 feet away from me, well, I don't need to look, I can't look up on the shore. I only want to look 30 feet, right?
Right.
So the trick that I use a lot, teaching people this when I'm in their boat or even when we're doing simulation mode, is just put your graphs on 100% side imaging. No menus up or nothing. Just side imaging. Has everybody got it? No menus are up, we're just looking at side imaging. Something that looks like a rock or a fish, take your cursor, your right or left arrows, and move that cursor over onto that item. See how your screen stopped moving? We'll see.
And you can go to both sides.
Everybody's got
You
it?
can go either way, yeah.
Cursor's on something, the screen's not moving, it's not scrolling.
Okay.
Okay, hit the plus button on your graph one time.
What you do is
You should all have a box now,
just move it.
right? It blew it up. One of the great
The
ways
plus
to
button.
see exactly what you've got going on. But one of the things we struggle with is the contrast and sensitivity, right? So now we have actually identified something that we want to look into. So hit the menu button. See where you get your contrast and sensitivity or your side imaging enhancement that Johnny taught you. But now the screen is stopped and you're already on a piece of structure that you want to look at. Here's where you go in and dial in that sensitivity and contrast to where it looks the best to you. You can do the same thing on down imaging as well, like Vern just said.
And then how do you exit out of that then?
Just hit exit and
Okay.
it'll get it.